Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cassie. We got episode 121. We've got a fair bit of stuff to talk about. Two great events this weekend. Dalton Smith had a tremendous win over Subriel Matias with a knockout in the fifth round that, as of right now, is going to go down for me as one of the wins of the year. That card had a ton of potentials on. I mean, Matias Smith was only 5 rounds, and yet we can talk about it being a fight of the year contender early on. And some other stuff on that undercard. Agit Kabayel stopped Damian Knyba in the third round of their interim heavyweight championship, and now is demanding a shot with Usyk in Germany, which the crowd was incredible. So I think that could happen. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the unfortunate news today regarding the potential Boots Ennis versus Vergil Ortiz fight. Seems like that one's not going to be next anymore, which a lot of people were predicting that they wouldn't be able to reach a deal. I was naive and hoping and thinking that they would be able to get it over the line, and doesn't look like that's going to be the case. But we're going to start with an announcement that was made today that we knew was coming, and that is that it is official. February 21st, Las Vegas, ring, high stakes. It's going to be Mario Barrios versus Ryan Garcia for Barrios' WBC welterweight championship. And this fight is very interesting because on one hand, a lot of people are kind of crapping on it, saying and I agree, how is this fight for a world title when you think about it? I mean, Barrios and Garcia are not even very good. And if you look at just the Ring Magazine who's putting on this fight, Barrios is ranked in number 10 in the welterweight division. Garcia isn't even ranked. And, I mean, Barrios drew with Pacquiao, who I also don't believe is ranked. And Garcia's last fight was a loss to Rolly Romero, who was also not ranked as a top 10 welterweight, even though Rolly and Barrios are two of the world champions. And just welterweight's weird because it now does have a lot of good fighters. It's just that those fighters had not been fighting for world titles, so the world title fights we've had are kind of lackluster. Now, I'm okay with this fight because I actually think it's very evenly matched. I think that, I don't know if I'd call it a 50-50, but I'm not sure who I'd favor in this one. I mean, neither of them have been on very good form. Barrios has never been overly good, and Ryan Garcia, his last fight, he had a horrible performance. And before that was the Devin Haney one, which would have been the best win of his career had he not been, popped for PEDs, and that got overturned. So he hasn't had a win since December of 2023 when he stopped Oscar Duarte. Barrios hasn't had a win since, I think, May of 2024 against Maidana. I think that was his last win. So it's just not really a great run of form. I am surprised that this is a Ring Magazine show. It seemed from the way it was talking that it was going to be a PBC X Golden Boy card and a PBC on Prime, but then it would also be on DAZN, on both networks. But it seems like that's changed, or that was never the case, and it's always been Turkey who's been putting this on. I actually prefer it as a Ring Magazine show because this means that we'll be able to have more possibilities for the undercard. We've already heard about Richardson Hitchens versus Oscar Duarte potentially on here. Another fight, if we can get a deal done, is Richard Torres versus Frank Sanchez. Lots of fights have been talked about to be on this February card, so we'll see what ends up on it. But yeah, February 21st, T-Mobile Arena, official, another big fight, a pay-per-view fight, a DAZN Ultimate subscription, so it is a pay-per-view, but if you have that DAZN subscription like I do, you won't have to pay for it, but I'm excited. It will not be on Prime Video. All right, let's talk about this weekend, and let's start with Subriel Matias, Dalton Smith. What a fantastic win for Dalton Smith. And this one, for some reason, it just kind of had some big fight feels. Maybe that was because we haven't had a true big fight in a while, and there was a lot of interest in this fight, and we knew that it had a lot of potential to be exciting, and it really did deliver. Those first 5 rounds were just nonstop action. As for me, I had, going into the 5th round, I had Matias up 39-37. I do not think it was his best performance, but I think that Smith was definitely falling into fighting his fight, and it was close. A lot of those rounds were close, but he was just kind of second best to Matias, and I thought that even though Matias was, as everyone's saying, his defense was, blocking the punches with his head, and that is true, I feel like he was showing less of at the end of the round, he would look less damaged than Smith looked. Now, going into that 5th round, Smith just was able to find him at the right time, catch him with a great shot, and then capitalize and drop him. Now, some people calling that stoppage early. I agree. I think in the moment it was a little bit early. However, he had plenty of time to work with. Had that gone on, he would have been stopped. Smith would have come over and then completely knocked him out cold. Yeah, it was just what a great win. I know the UK is super happy. I mean, talk about 5 months ago, we had Nick Ball fighting Sam Goodman, which was kind of looked at as a 50-50 fight, and he was the only UK world champion. And all the British media was talking about, man, if he loses, we have no world champions. That'll be the first time in decades. And he was able to win that night. And then since then, you've just had big British win after big British win. I mean, you had Lewis Crocker win over Paddy Donovan. Then you had Fabio Wardley beat Joseph Parker and get upgraded. Jazza Dickens got upgraded after beating Barrios-Ryan. And now Dalton Smith pulls off an upset against Subriel Matias, which may be the most impressive win of them all. Maybe hold Parker versus Wardley, but I think that this one may top that. I mean, this was really, really impressive. Obviously, everyone's talking about how long is he going to hold on the title for. Do we do Adam Azim next? I would love to do the Adam Azim fight now. I've thought for a long time now that Azim was kind of ducking him and holding off because he wanted to make that fight for the world title. Well, Dalton Smith is now a world champion. So you can make that fight. Richardson Hitchens, if he gets past Duarte like we're hearing is next, that's a great in-house unification fight that Matchroom can do. I would love to see that fight next. And then you've also got Alberto Puello, who is likely to be called mandatory, as he was the champion and then arguably could have gotten the decision over Matias in July of last year. Isaac Pitbull Cruz is an option as well. He's obviously interim champion. Maybe Lamont Roach just gets jumped over as well. Lots of fights out there for Smith. Not sure who they do end up going next with. We know that they are going to want to do a defense with him in Sheffield. I do not believe it'll be Adam Azim. I think Smith has even said that he's kind of, he feels like he gave him that opportunity a lot, which I don't like. Now that you're a world champion, you can, actually just have him fight you, and maybe there's some incentive there. But if I'm being honest, part of me feels like it could be none of those options, and they'll find someone in the WBC top 15 who's not overly challenging so that Smith can get his perfect night at the stadium there, maybe even, and have a world title defense at home. As for that undercard, it ended up being a fantastic card. Co-main event was Emmanuel Manny Rodriguez coming back to the ring for the first time since losing his IBF Bantamweight Championship to Ryosuke Nishida. He had a 10-round unanimous decision win over Fernando Diaz, including a first-round knockdown. I thought it was a pretty fun fight to watch. He looked good. He may even be, injected into that consensus top 10 ranking at bantamweight now. I thought that he looked really, really good coming off around a 2-year layoff. So, yeah, he's back in the ring now. We'll see what's next for him. And then you had a potential round of the year as Javier Cintron gets dropped hard. He was hurt by Victor Sandoval. Came in on just a few days' notice. Cintron gets up and, knows that Sandoval's going to go crazy. And I think that Sandoval was just very reckless, and obviously too reckless, because Cintron then is able to deliver 4 knockdowns, all within the first round, to get himself the win via stoppage, TKO at the end of the first round. Just what a crazy fight that was, and that is going to be on the list for round of the year come the end of the year. And then Nestor Bravo in the second round delivered a serious knockout of the year contender. Again, it's only January, we already had this, but he put Pedro Campa's lights out, put him completely to sleep. That was a very, very impressive knockout. Again, he was also coming back after his first professional loss to Zolzani and Donjeni, and what a return it was. And, great knockout of the year contender, round of the year contender. And although early, and it probably won't be on the list at the end, but I think the main event could be a fight of the year contender. Okay, let's talk about Kabayel. I've actually seen, after this fight, I was expecting Kabayel to get a lot more flowers, and I've seen more so just criticism, I guess, and people saying he wouldn't last against Usyk. And look, I agree. I do not think that Kabayel has much of a chance, if any, against Usyk. But when you look at the guys there, he kind of feels like he may be the most deserving contender. Now, going into this fight, I knew it was a huge mismatch. I expected Kabayel to get him out maybe in the mid-rounds, work to the body, as we know he likes to do, and what he would have to do with that huge size difference. I mean, Knyba was a whole head taller than him, so we knew that Kabayel was going to want to get to that body, make him uncomfortable. And from the opening bell, Knyba was far active than we were anticipating and made this a firefight. I thought that he took the first round over Kabayel, and I'm kind of sitting there watching, like, what the hell is happening here? Like, Kabayel is just letting him beat him up, like. And then after that, Kabayel just takes the fight by the horns and just makes it his and has a good second round. And then round 3 is able to stop it. Again, another stoppage. And we're going to talk about this German commission because they had horrible stoppages all night long. This one a little bit early, you could say. I wasn't too mad because, again, we knew which way it was going. But look, the main thing about this event was the crowd. The German crowd was incredible. They were super, super into it, very loud, very fun to, listen to, and they really made a case to do Usyk having to fight Kabayel next in Germany. It's a different location to do a big fight at. You can do a stadium there, and Kabayel is a star there, where before everyone was kind of talking about, I don't know if Kabayel's going to get the Usyk fight because he's just not that well known. When you put him in there with guys like Daniel Dubois, Deontay Wilder, even Fabio Wardley. These names we're talking about as fighting him, they're far more famous in the general boxing sphere and the casual sphere in the English-speaking countries than Agit Kabayel is, but he is a superstar in Germany. He sold out that arena. It was one of the best atmospheres we've heard in years in boxing. I'd kind of love to see Usyk versus Kabayel in a stadium in Germany. I doubt it happens next, but I'd like to see it. Another option, of course, is Fabio Wardley could be getting that, and people are even talking about who wins. I would actually say, looking at Kabayel's defense in that first round against Knyba, I would probably pick Wardley. You can't write him off anymore. He just knocks everyone out. So Wardley probably deserves it a little bit more than Usyk, or a little bit more than Kabayel does, but it seems that Usyk's not really interested in fighting against Wardley, and that's why he vacated the WBO. They were talking about Lawrence Okolie, who's obviously WBC #1. That's a potential fight. Tony Yoka, for some reason, they were mentioning, which I have no interest in that. Daniel Dubois is a great fight. He's got options, and I just hope that they choose someone good for him. Also on that undercard, you had Jadir Herrera win the WBC Interim Lightweight Championship over Ricardo Nunes. I thought that, Herrera definitely did not start strong. He got dropped in the first round. It was a pretty good knockdown. But after being down on the cards for me after those first 2 rounds, he kind of collected himself and turned into his fight. And then he was kind of running away with it, or at least, outboxing him. And it was a very, very fun fight to watch. And then 8th round, he hurts Nunes, and it's getting a stoppage. And it's a bizarre stoppage as, again, the ref is stepping in kind of early again. And then it gets pushed down by Herrera. And I thought he got punched. He was down. And he gets back up. And then the fight truly gets stopped, and it was a little bit odd of in an early stoppage. A lot of early stoppages on this card, but it is what it is. Herrera is now WBC interim champion, and look, I think he has potential, but I definitely think this was one of his roughest performances. And say Shakur does beat Teofimo Lopez on January 31st, and he decides to stay at 140 pounds. Herrera will be upgraded to full WBC lightweight champion, and that title is just waiting for somebody else to come and grab it. Because if he shows up the way he did on that night against another champion or top contender at 135, he gets stopped. I don't see him being competitive with the likes of, Abdullah Mason, Andy Cruz, Murataya. Right now, I think they just all beat him. So that's my 2 cents on it. Not his best performance, but, gets that interim championship very earlier on in his career that I was expecting to get a shot like that, but it is what it is. Also in the card, Peter Milas, great win over Granit Xhela. Competitive fight, and then, both guys needed that 10th round, and Milas finishes him in the 10th round. But, man, that was one of the worst stoppages I've seen in a while. And I'm not saying it's a worse stoppage that they called it too early. They called it far too late, where Xhela is completely out on his feet. He doesn't know where he is. He's barely making the count. And the ref just continues to allow him to, Milas to beat on him. Milas is pointing to him like, dude, he's done. Xhela is wobbling all over the place. And then he literally gets knocked down so hard, and the ref is still counting. While the corner's already thrown in the towel, they have to walk up to the ref and say, hey, dude, stop the fight. I was just so annoyed because all night the German refs were stopping stuff way too early. And then when finally we needed something to be stopped on time, where were they? It was just terrible refereeing, and that's the only issue I have with the potential Usyk Kabayel in Germany is that commission just being so bad at their jobs. But look, great win for Peter Milas, went to the IBF International Heavyweight Championship. I was really impressed, and it was a really, really fun heavyweight fight to watch. Big wins for Nelvi Tiafak on the undercard. Roman Fury just very average looking. And again, these were mostly early stoppages. Kevin Sazik, first round knockout in his heavyweight fight. Daniel Dietz and Soon Salami, competitive matchup, and it was a really fun fight. Ended in a draw. I had Salami winning for the upset, but that was a really fun watch. Gleb Bakshi had a first round knockout over Juan Duran in a 10-round middleweight fight. That was pretty impressive. So I enjoyed this Germany card. Hopefully we get more events there. I know German boxing used to be big, and maybe it has a resurgence this year led by Kabayel. All right, let's talk about Oscar De La Hoya because, man, he may have just had the fumble of the century with this Boots Ennis Vergil Ortiz fight. Essentially, we talked about it last episode. The state of this fight was we've been working on it for a while. Vergil's manager keeps on wanting more money and all this stuff. Oscar calls out his manager and says, you're trying to make a deal behind my back. Don't make me sue you type shit. All this stuff. And then is saying, look, my offer to Eddie Hearn, we want to do a 60-40 split in favor of Vergil, 5% to the winner. Eddie says, we've already agreed on a deal. We already agreed on a 50-50. It has to be 50-50. Maybe they'd even agreed on a 55-45 at one point. I don't know. Obviously, Vergil's not agreeing to it now. We can't put too much, hate on him because if you remember back in February, they were meant to fight and Boots didn't accept the fight then. So, we can't necessarily call Vergil too much of a duck. However, I think this is really, really upsetting from Golden Boy. Because back then we wanted the fight, but it didn't feel like the fight needed to happen. Boots was still at 147. He still had stuff he wanted to do there. Now they're both at 154. This feels like the perfect time to do this fight, especially after we built it so much after their last fights and they faced off on November 8th. Like that was just the fight that we needed to see, and we're letting it slip away, and it's very disappointing. Everyone has been saying, oh, this fight's not going to happen next, and I thought it was going to. He gave Eddie Hearn a deadline by Monday night. Eddie didn't call him apparently, so Oscar's now saying, fight's done, I'm moving on. He's talked about, look, we got other options for Vergil. We can do Cowboy Stadium versus Errol Spence, which is not going to happen. Spence is not going to come back. It's been 2.5 years, move on. Or we can do Sebastian Fundora in Vegas, which I actually wouldn't hate. I mean, WBC champion versus the interim champion. That fight should probably happen at some point. That's two top 5 154-pounders. I just have more interest in watching Boots and Vergil fight. That's all. So if it does come up that next it's going to be Fundora versus Vergil, and it's going to be, which is not because Fundora's apparently going to fight Keith Thurman still, and Boots goes up against Israel Madrimov or the winner of Bakram Murtazali of Josh Kelly, which we all, Matchroom and everyone thinks it's going to be Josh Kelly. It's not going to be Josh Kelly. Regardless of who that ends up being, this is just very disappointing, especially considering there's a report that just came out that Golden Boy, their deal with DAZN is apparently up. Now, I don't know if this means Friday they have their next show with Rocha Curiel too. There's nothing on the calendar after that besides, the February 21st card, which is with The Ring. I don't know if that means that post that, Golden Boy on DAZN is over. That's kind of what it sounds like. That's the last fight of their deal currently. And if that's the case, we're hearing that DAZN is putting a lot of pressure on Golden Boy to deliver that Ortiz-Ennis fight, saying that if they want to renew their schedule, if they want to renew their deal that they have right now, one of the conditions is that you got to deliver us some big fights, mainly that one. If you deliver us that, then we'll more heavily consider renewing. Oscar's moving on. People think that Oscar is intentionally moving on in lieu of getting a deal with Prime Video because he's talked about teaming up with PBC for stuff. I don't know about that. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Golden Boy's thinking, oh, what if we go to Prime? Prime doesn't seem too interested in boxing, having not really invested and put too much behind PBC to get them more cards. It's all been pay-per-view, essentially. I think that they've done about 10 or 12 shows in total over the last 2 years on Prime Video, about probably like 7 or 8 of which have been pay-per-views. They just haven't really invested into it much, and I'd be shocked if they brought on yet another competitor, one that probably is a weaker roster. And, if you did, you'd have more non-pay-per-views because Golden Boy does not really have many pay-per-view stars, if any, besides Ryan Garcia and, Vergil or Zurdo Ramirez on occasion. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a smart idea from them. They don't seem to be too invested. However, Prime Video has a way wider audience than the DAZN does. I mean, their subscriber base, they have a bigger subscriber base than Netflix, I'm pretty sure. And if not bigger than them, they have second best, like very close to it. Because everybody who gets Amazon Prime immediately gets a subscription to Prime Video. So I'm sure that a lot of those PBC non-pay-per-view cards, if they were actually promoted, would have done pretty good numbers. And I hope that if Golden Boy does go that direction, that they're able to succeed and have a more consistent schedule than PBC has had, but I don't really see that happening. I hope Golden Boy renews with DAZN, I do, but we're just going to have to see. Khamzat Chimaev has called out Alex Pereira for the UFC White House card. I'm really disappointed in Khamzat. He's been very inactive, and he's finally middleweight champion, and he doesn't want to make any defenses. Nasruddin Imavov is waiting. They're about to have Sean Strickland, Fluffy Hernandez. The winner of that is going to be demanding a title shot. Khamzat needs to get off the couch and go defend the belt. I know he had surgery and stuff, and it seems like he really wants to be on that White House card. That's fine, but have him defend against Imavov. There's no reason why he should jump up to light heavyweight when he hasn't made a single defense of the middleweight title. I do think that 205 is in his future. It's just no need to rush there, especially considering that Pereira is on his way to move up to heavyweight. We've heard that John Jones say that Dana White's not on board for that fight, and if I'm them, I think that's stupid. I mean, I think that John Jones, Alex Pereira is probably the second biggest fight that you could make in the UFC right now, only second to Conor McGregor versus anyone. Obviously, he's just completely in his own stratosphere, and he is supposed to make his return on that White House card. Hold him. I really do think that Jones versus Pereira is probably the biggest fight. I think it's bigger than Islam versus Ilya in terms of generating interest. I think they're neck and neck, and I think that even though Jones-Aspinall has had a lot of hype behind it and a lot of drama, I think that Pereira is a bigger name than Aspinall, and that fight would do numbers. So I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening, but I really don't have much interest in Pereira waiting at 205 for Khamzat to come up. I think that Khamzat needs to stay at 185, and Pereira should go up to heavyweight. Apparently, Tyson Fury has been offered Brandon Moore for his comeback. Now, Brandon Moore, American heavyweight prospect / contender, headlined a lot of shows for Salida Promotions last year. Only lost to Richard Torres when they fought in 2024, and now Dimitri Salida has put up more to fight Fury in the comeback. Now, I don't know if this is them just trying to cash out. I don't know if this is Salida trying to stage a fight with Fury, because there's no way he'll be able to pay Fury. This has got to be a Turkey show, and Salida just saying, look, Turkey, you can have him fight more. I wouldn't really like that fight. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think that I'm expecting Tyson Fury to not come back against somebody in the top 10, and Brandon Moore's probably in that top 30 to 40. I'm not sure where exactly he falls, but yeah, I don't really have a lot of interest in Fury fighting somebody like Moore, and I think that'd be pretty bad for Moore's career. We don't have a lot of American heavyweights coming up. Moore is one of the higher-rated American heavyweights right now. He's probably top 10 American heavyweight. Don't throw him in with Tyson Fury. He can have, I don't think he wins a world title, but he can have some bigger fights before then. Apparently, Pacheco Sheeraz is going to purse bids. This was very surprising given that this fight, after Pacheco's last fight, Ring Magazine put out, look, Turkey wants to put on Hamzah Sheeraz-Diego Pacheco on this February card that I don't think is happening anymore. That was meant to be the AJ fight on Valentine's Day. AJ obviously not fighting then. This has now been ordered for the WBO title. Spencer Brown is saying that Sheeraz could still go down the Billy route, and in that case, Pacheco would probably fight Jacob Bank should he get through William Skoll at the end of the month for the vacant title. Who knows? But very disappointing that this fight is going to have to go to purse bids. The only thing I was thinking about is, well, maybe this is just that Eddie and Pacheco don't want it, but that's not true. They're saying that they love the fight. They want to have the fight. So if both sides want it, why can't we reach a deal, especially when Turkey's involved? I mean, have we ever seen a fight go to purse bid when Turkey's the one involving it? There's been a lot of rumors recently that Saudi is, pulling back on its investment in boxing, except for the Zuffa boxing and stuff. If that's the case, this may explain it, but I would think that Turkey's still interested in putting on this fight, and there'd be no need for purse bid because they could just pay them both a ton of money. We mentioned earlier Richardson, Hitchens, Oscar Duarte's in negotiations for that February 21st card. Now that we know it's official and it's a ring card, it makes me feel much more confident that this fight will be on there. I think it's a good fight. I'm not mad at Duarte getting a title shot at all. And I think that him and Hitchens, their styles will gel really well. It's a good boxer versus puncher matchup. Obviously, Hitchens does have a mandatory in Lindolfo Delgado. I think that Duarte is a far more competitive fight with Hitchens than Delgado is. So I'm okay with them, leaving that out for a bit. And then after that, you're going to have to defend against him. You got a unification with Dalton Smith you can do. Unifications with Shakur Tiafimo winner. Who knows? Lots of options for Richardson, Hitchens should he get past Oscar Duarte. But, it's a bit of a tall task. There's not a lot of news around it. I just wanted to mention Patty the Baddie and Dan Hooker had a real nasty Twitter beef, said some terrible things about each other, both of them. I'm not really going to say what those were, but look, whatever happens January 24th and January 31st, they both got big fights coming up. Maybe if one of them loses, one of them wins, I don't know. This is a fight that I do think we need to get to at some point because, one, it would just be so much fun in the fight itself, but the build-up we're seeing would be incredible. So, again, the lightweight title picture and the whole division is going to change a lot over these next few weeks, and it's going to change throughout the year. We don't know what's going on with Ilya, but that's a fight that I do think should happen at some point. It was reported today that Efe Ajagba and Charles Martin have both signed with Zuffa Boxing and are reportedly going to fight each other in the headline event on Valentine's Day, February 14th, at the Apex. And that has been confirmed that there will be a card there per Nevada State Athletic Commission as of January 30th. So the 23rd, we've got Walsh versus Ocampo. The 30th, have another fight, no main event yet. And then the 14th, it's sounding like it's going to be Ajagba versus Martin. Charles Martin, not a great signing. I think Ajagba definitely beats him and probably stops him, but Ajagba is a great signing for Zuffa Boxing. Recently parted ways with Top Rank. I and many others consider him a top 10 rated heavyweight right now. And for Zuffa Boxing to get their hands on a top 10 fighter in any division is a bit surprising, but particularly at heavyweight is really, really big for them. They can now have their kind of and look, he's not the biggest name, but you can have a legitimate top heavyweight who's can be their stable Zuffa Boxing heavyweight champion. I don't know if they're planning on introducing the ranking system and the titles just yet in the first year when they don't have much of a roster, but if they do, this fight would probably, I would have to think of Ajagba as the front runner to be the face of their heavyweight division. Very good signing and not a horrible main event out of all the things. The only thing I'll say is that Ajagba versus Martin and Walsh versus Ocampo feel like regular boxing matches. They don't feel like 50-50 fights like we're being promised how it's going to be the UFC model. Callum Walsh is going to be a heavy favorite against Carlos Ocampo. F.A. Ajagba is going to be a very heavy favorite over Charles Martin. And I'm also curious, 3 back-to-back cards, how big is their roster? Are we going to have 4 fight cards? Is it going to be 10 fight cards? I'm really curious. And again, we are now, 11 days away from the debut card. Still no announcement on the undercard. We have no idea what the system is going to look like. No even official announcement about Callum Walsh, Carlos Ocampo, so that really should come out tomorrow. But who knows, man? I have no idea what's going on. Some UFC schedule updates. Zell Huber versus King Green has been added to the Mexico card on February 28th. That card is being shaped together quite nicely. I'm really liking the fight nights in the Paramount Plus era. It seems like they're going to try and put good fights back to back. Marcin Tybura is going to fight Walter Walker at Seattle on March 28th. Another one. Walter Walker having his first ranked heavyweight fight, I'm pretty sure. Where he's fighting another ranked opponent. So hopefully he gets another heel hook there and moves up the rankings because he's a potential heavyweight prospect for them. And Zell Huber Green is a great fight. It's actually a winnable fight for King Green, I think. I'm excited for UFC to get back. This drought has been far too long. It's been almost 6 weeks. This is the last weekend where we won't have UFC, and then we get kicked off in a huge way. 324 and 325 back-to-back. We don't talk about enough how awesome that is, so I'm really excited. And then last bit of news, Joshua Pagan versus Jimenez. I can't remember the first name. That fight card with Bear versus Pursuit in the co-main event meant to happen January 22nd has now been pushed back to February 10th, which is a Tuesday. Weird that we're going to have boxing on a Tuesday, but don't hate it. It's been pushed back. No actual reason was given. I believe it's now in a different area of Michigan, but apparently tickets are still valid for those who did already purchase. Just a really, really weird decision. I'm sure there was some logical reason behind it, but to push it back a few weeks to a Tuesday is very odd to me. They were going to do it on a Thursday, which makes more sense for boxing. We still see a fair bit amount of Thursday night main events, but Tuesday, really out of nowhere. But that's all I got for today. Thank y'all so much for listening. Next episode, probably going to be Thursday, where we'll preview Nikita Tszyu versus Michael Zarafa. Very big fight in Australia. Probably no way for us to watch it here in the States, but still a good fight nonetheless. Alexis Rocha, Raul Carrillo 2, also Friday, that one at night. And then BKFC 86, headlined by Julian Lane, Dustin Peg, takes center stage on Saturday night on DAZN. So thank y'all so much for listening. Have a good week, and peace out.